Hi, welcome. In this video, it's just gonna be a brief story time, just kind of a background touch up about who I am, where I'm from, and kind of what had happened to me in my life. The more major uh, e- events in my life. So I'm gonna tell you guys everything that I know up until today that I can think of, and this is all just going to be brief, so it's going to be a very short video, as short as possible that I can make. Then we're gonna, through time, when feel ready to make longer videos and more like detailed videos, I'll be able to make those more in depth about how I feel about it and why I need to make a video about it, I guess. So we're gonna start from, I guess, that's a general look of who I am. So I'm from Ermineskin Cree Nation, Obima, now known as Musqueam, and I was born in 1994. And well, growing up on the reserve, we'll try to get through this part as quick as possible because there is quite a bit of information, but I will talk more in depth about it in another video for sure. But what I will say is, for me growing up there, from a child, I was born in a decade where the the health level of the community was just starting to diminish. The technology was just being introduced, and growing up there, I was able to kind of oversee the transition that the community was going through, and there was a lot of violence that was around, but there wasn't like a like. Well, what I will say is, from the beginning, from let's say up until I was like 5 years old, there was hardly any violence. But after like I was five and onward, it started to pick up. So there's the violent stuff that happened on the reserve, and coming up with the family, and staying with both my mother and my father, and then them getting separated because violence. And yeah, so the best I could say about being on the reserve is, growing up, I got to like wander around, I guess. I have a brother, so me and him, we would always wander around and just explore our little community, and it wasn't until we were old enough to really explore, which was about, I was like 6 years old, started walking around and just going through like all the old stuff. So there was, yeah, so we'll get into that kind of stuff into another video. So we'll kind of fast forward a little bit. Now where we just moved from Alberta to Vancouver, BC. So through that transition, my mom and father is separated because of domestic abuse, and so my father moved us out kind of like just overnight. So that's how that happened. And then me and my brother had to kind of like change, and like kind of had to go through culture shock moving to a big city. So we moved there, or we went to visit Vancouver once, and we moved back, kind of like a small vacation. And then we ended up moving because it was better out there than it was on reserve. We ended up making it to Vancouver, and there was culture shock there. And because of that culture shock, I was scared for the way that I was going to be seen, because I was already maturing as a young kid having to go through all of these uh, events in my life, and especially with the trauma part, the domestic abuse. So going there, the big city, school, and everything, I was silent, absolutely silent. I didn't say anything, hardly made any conversation, and I really tried to make it in a way where no one could really ask me about my life, and nobody had. No one had ever asked me about my life. It's a good thing, also a bad thing because I could have gotten help a long time ago when I was a child, but nobody asked. So I had to like kind of keep myself silent. So before I ended up moving to Vancouver, I was sexually abused by three of my cousins, and I know I'm not allowed to say their names until that they get convicted, and I'll be able to provide proper names. I was sexually abused by three family members. They were all well in their like 17s, 18s, maybe like 16, but at that time I was definitely under 10 years old or around 10 years old. Nobody ever really tried to get information or figure it out. But so that happened. So we tried to survive on the reserve first, and then trying to survive in the city, and as well as having to go through the whole social life thing and having to go through the culture shock. My dad did well bringing us up, and then there came a point where um, my father was dealing with a lot of issues, and so he kind of took out his anger on us, but not really. He would just get like, as anybody would, So they would get drunk and then, or not like drunk, but like they would drink, then get upset, and then So I ended up having to move away because I couldn't physically be around that kind of uh, behavior. I stayed with my auntie for a while after staying with my father, um, because me and my brother were being moved back and forth from my father to my mother because they really couldn't handle us, I guess. Well, in their terms, they couldn't handle us, but I know exactly why I wasn't functioning. And for my brother, I would say kind of the same thing. But I guess in that part is, as a child, you don't know what school is, and the only school that you know is kindergarten when you first get started into school, and they don't really teach you anything. They teach you how to paint, how to draw, and in kindergarten is the first, or even preschool is the first place where you learn how to interact. And me growing up, I know my preschool experiences, and I never interacted with anyone, and after my preschool experience, that's when I really got affected. I wasn't able to grow at the preschool, so going into, especially on the reserve, all of this was like preschool on the reserve, then K1, then grade 1, and through those, from I think grade 1, I think is when the violence started happening in school. And I think it was just after grade 1. I forget. I know it started as soon as I hit elementary. Like kids were fighting and whatnot, but so now we're gonna move back to Vancouver. So now we're in Vancouver. I'm like 12 years old. Yeah, like 11, 12 years old. And then going through the school process. Yeah, so I gotta really narrow this down. So, yeah, so Alberta, Vancouver, school, culture shock, having to deal with the coping. And I started, it's the first time that I really started try marijuana at that time. And then, um, yeah, just surviving through elementary and then having to go back to my mother. We ended up losing contact of all of our friends. Well, for me, all of my friends, I lost contact. And then being in another place like Saskatchewan, then going back to the kind of a lower society, and then going from that, then through that, um, like senior elementary years, and then having to come back to Vancouver, and then having to go to high school. Like I just really didn't function well around school, and I went to school and everything, but it didn't really click. There was nothing that was going on. To me, it was more of like a routine of some sort, and I didn't understand what school really meant until I was like 21. You know, like really taking the time to understand what everything means. But yeah, now we're in Vancouver from Alberta, surviving. Moved away from my father, staying with my auntie. Then I had to survive staying with my auntie, you know. And what I'll say with that is, I had to take care of people emotionally, and I had to survive physically by eating scraps, what was offered, and eating bread, which is to me is like the cheapest thing that you could possibly think of is a loaf of bread, and because let's say if it were rice, then if I had to make rice and it's not my house, then I'm doing the extra mile of eating somebody's rice, and using their dishes and using their their spread or whatever, their butter, and then and having to use their dish. So there's a lot of things that I had to refrain from doing growing up, staying with my auntie. And it wasn't just with my auntie alone. It was with my auntie and her daughter, and her daughter with her son, and then along with that, my auntie was taking care of her sister's children, so I had to take care of them, like not the kids themselves, but I had to kind of like take care of the duties around it, which cleaning dishes, all the basic stuff. So I had to go through that, surviving off of practically bread, and then then I got abandoned because they moved to Alberta. They just didn't come back, and then they abandoned the building. So I was staying in an abandoned building. This one day, I said it was like these guys aren't coming back. So I packed up all my shit and I went to the shelter, which was the Covenant House, and from where I was at, maybe like 10 blocks, I had to carry all these bags there. And I had to stay there, and I was staying with them for like three months or something. And through that process, I ended up landing a place at the Orwell Hotel, which is on Hastings in Vancouver. And yeah, so that's where I started kind of on my own there. So there's a lot of information that I'm missing and that I'm not putting in, but we're gonna like try to jump through this as quick as possible. So the Orwell, and then a bunch of other houses here, and then um, just trying to find the right one that was for me, because surviving, trying to figure it out. Then I ended up landing a place on. See, through all this as well, the whole time I've been trying to go to school and whatnot. And another thing is, I was also staying with one of my other aunties because I was signed up to be on a youth agreement. I believe they call it YA, youth agreement. And so it was on that. I was staying with the BYRC, Broadway Youth Resource Center. So they're the one who are helping me with that program. And so they helped me with a place to stay. They put fresh paint. I couldn't stay in there because I have bad like breathing, because I had asthma as a child, so I can't stay in like a very toxic environment for very long. So I was getting sick and whatnot, and so I had to leave. I was going back and forth from that place. The person that was living inside the BYRC building, she was living there, being house support, and I guess she told them that I wasn't staying there. While I was waiting for the air to fully clean out so I could stay there, because it, it wasn't in a way for me to stay there. So then she got me kicked off a youth agreement because the people from the BYRC, they simply said, "Oh, it's another one of those natives using the program for this and that," and when they don't even know how I got on the program at all, then they ruined it. I had to go back to the office, and I tried to plead with them, and I told them, "It's like I really need this." It's like the housing was an issue. It was like issue with the housing. Then I got kicked off of YA. I had to survive again with my aunties and whatnot, you know. And then in that process, before I was staying there, I was staying with my other auntie, and she abandoned me as well. She got her son involved, and she made him take care of me when I was signed over to stay with her. Her name was signed on the youth agreement, and he was the one that, you know, he was like 2 or 3 years older than me, but still, you know. And then he ended up putting a machete to my throat because he was hanging out with his quote unquote boys because he's affiliated, you know, and he put a huge machete to my throat. Huge, like this big, probably even bigger. Put it right to my throat, you know. And he was drunk and everything, and he knows that I'm a type of person that really gets upset, you know. And if I can't express myself, you know, there's something wrong, you know. And it really traumatized me into a psychological thing, you know, because he's, you know, he's white, and he's, well, technically he's Native, but I think he's more dominant of his white because like whatever genes that it mixed up, but he's more, I say, of a white person. It shows because of the way that he treats other native people other than his own family, you know. And even treated his own brother pretty unfairly. He ended up, I say he took his life, but you know, everybody says that he just took drugs that weren't clean. But you know, I see it one way and everybody sees it another way. But you know, I even told him before he even did it, because I knew he was gonna do it. He was already talking about it. I told him, I was like, make sure you're with somebody. Like, make sure you do that. Make sure your worker knows what you're doing, and make sure he has that kit for you. And I make sure to tell him, and being smart about it, rather than tell him not to get mad at him and whatnot. You know, I try to teach him, like, yo, man, make sure you fucking have somebody with you. You know, I did my part to make sure that he was properly educated. Not saying I wanted him to do anything, man. Just make sure you know that somebody's with you, man. Anyways, so that, and then um, yeah, he just kind of treats everybody unfairly, and yeah. So now we're Alberta, Vancouver, back to Saskatchewan, back to Vancouver. Then we went back to Saskatchewan. Now we're back in Vancouver. So yeah, I lost all the connection with my friends on both sides technically, and you know, um, Yeah, so then we're now back in Vancouver. And now I'm in high school. Didn't really get to high school, but somehow I landed like grade 8, I think. So we're at like grade 8, and I'm at the Quatland Park, um, in Surrey, BC. I was staying with my dad at the time, and that was before he ended up going through that stuff, and I had to go stay with my auntie. That's where my education stopped. So how it kind of stopped was I was going to school, and there was this other native kid. He was a big, chunky, kind of bubbly, like not like personality, but like he was a chunky guy. Like he looked, see, he was a big guy. So I was going to school every now and then. I guess because I was the only native person, he decided to kind of, I don't want to say pick on me, because me as a person, I I don't think I would let anybody pick on me, because I'm a fighter. Like I know my right. I know my worth. So I don't really think he was picking on me. Because it was more like a harassment. A picking on someone is like something you kind of think of like a kind of like a funny thing, but this was like an intentional kind of like disbehavior, almost like harassment, and so out of nowhere I just get this harassment, and his buddies flicking pieces of paper at me, and then I just let it slide. Then one day he's like keeps doing it, and I think he was like saying some stuff, but and just one day I just got out of my chair, and I just looked at him. I turned around and I looked at him. I just reached down towards him, grabbed him. As I grabbed him, because of the training I went through, I've been through a lot of taekwondo, a lot of keto, a lot of karate. I've been through a lot of that, so I know a lot about like mental management, like how to manage your emotions. First thing that they teach you in martial arts, and as I grabbed him, that training kicked in, because I knew I was gonna hurt him. The second I put my hand on him, I knew I was gonna hurt him. So I just told myself, like, well, don't hurt him. So I didn't. All I did was I grabbed him by the neck, and I did a little wrestling turnover and tossed him from his chair onto the ground, from my left to my right. And I tossed him onto the ground, and I just kind of kept my arm around his neck, and I flexed once, and then as I did that, I kind of unflexed. I just kind of held him there, and then from that point, I just kind of said, what, fuck it, and I just let him go. And then that's when the teacher's like, oh, you should go to the office, this and that. So I went to the office, and then through that whole situation, I was stuck in the office for about 2 hours. Within that 2 hours, nobody talked to me. They just sat me down there to say, have a seat here. The principal will come over, talk to you, and then I'm waiting for the principal. And then next thing you know, I see this officer come in. He's like, you're going to be charged for assault. And you got to appear in court and everything. And I was like, what? I didn't say anything. I had to go through all of that. I had to go to court. I had to do community service. And then for community service, I had to make, what they offered was some kind of artwork. So I had to make artwork, and then I brought it to them, and they put it in a display for. There's another story to that, but yeah. So I had to do community service for throwing somebody out of their chair for harassing me, and I didn't even get a say of anything. And yeah, so that's where my education stopped. Ever since then, I think I got up to where I'm at now is like grade 10, I think. That was back when I was, let's see, 15, maybe like 14, 14, 15. Because I remember my 16th birthday, and that was a long time after. So I would have been at least 14 years old at that time, give or take. So that's where my education stopped. So now we're way fast forwarding it. So now we're uh, on my own, and I ended up landing at a place the it's a brand new building. It's by the Broadway Youth Resource Center. They had to tear it down and then they built a new high rise. The BYRC is now next door to it because it used to be the first door, the old building. But now it's the second door further down. And this place is called Kwayatsu. Kwayatsu. So me and my brother ended up living there as one of their first tenants in their two room. We were related; they could fit us in. So as soon as we moved in there, me and my brother had like a unbalanced because he had played music and whatnot. So he'd always have stuff because he was on disability, and at the time I was on welfare. And I was always struggling just to have basic stuff to keep myself up, and so we ended up splitting up from that. Then we ended up splitting into different rooms, and then going through all of my trials and tribulations, having to deal with my trauma, and especially having that as one of the first experiences. So that kind of hate relationship kind of stuck. Me, I've never kind of had a hate rather than a dislike, because a hate causes a lot of bad fortune. And so therefore, my sorry to say this, but I know for a fact my life has never been in a good standpoint because around that time I had kind of made a business and I kind of like kept it under the rug, just kind of hoping one day I'd be able to build it, and I did make it into a business and I had to close it, but that was more recent than where we're at in the storyline. So around that time, I told myself, you know what, it's a lot safer just to be around family, so I'd stick around my brother a lot. And with that process of me kind of sticking to what I know, what is like kind of humble, it would turn into a kind of like a shit show for me because I didn't know my brother didn't want nothing to do with me, in a sense of like just not caring, like any other sibling, but it, I didn't know what was going on. I didn't understand, and not all siblings are like that. Now, so I didn't have the guidance that I needed, so I had to go through a lot of trials and tribulations, getting evicted, and whatnot, because I wasn't getting any help. If anything, from the extended family, and including my brother, I would get a lot of emotional distress, and a lot of like issues would come up. So it was one of the main reasons why I couldn't function and why I couldn't really go to school, why I couldn't do anything, because even if I did land a job or if I was going to school, somehow, some way, something had to come into my life to make me weigh out the pros and the cons to figure out, can I do this? And every time that I told myself, can I do this? The answer every single time was no, because I had to assess every situation. And then at the end of it, I just told myself, I was like, this is unachievable. This is not something that is feasible, And so, with all of that trial and tribulation coming up till this day, for like since what, grade 8, or like not grade 8, but moving in with my brother, and then that's when all of this started, because our relationship was pretty okay up until that point. Then after that, it just kind of paved the way up until like, I would say maybe like 2 years ago. I would say maybe 3 years ago. That's when I would even say up until like a year ago. That's when kind of things kind of were falling apart and whatnot. And I never been able to meet anybody, not talk to anybody, not have any relationships. I had never had one being in a big city because I was constantly being bombarded, being interrupted by other people in their lives. Me having to survive and taking care of people and whatnot. Doesn't matter who it is. Extended family or my brother. Had to go through all of those tentative things. And then that leaves me not being able to take care of myself. I had to go through this whole thing my whole life. So, now I'm 27 years old. I still haven't graduated. And when people ask me, "Oh, what do you want to do what do you want to be?" And I always tell them, I want to do business and I want to be a counselor. But, like, I can't say that anymore because I haven't even graduated. I have to talk to them and tell them, it's like, I'm just trying to graduate. Like, I'm just trying to graduate. We'll talk about the other stuff as soon as I graduate. Like, because I already know what I want to do. I just have to graduate first. That's the hardest thing for me. And I've been trying to graduate ever since, you know, and everyone in my life is a witness to that they know for a fact that I've been trying to go to school. They know for a fact that I've been trying to put my effort to go to school. But that's the thing about school and First Nations people. First Nations people, they don't know what school means. They don't know what school is. They have no idea. People think what school is. People think school is a playground. They straight up think it's a kindergarten playground. They think there's bikes there. They think there's slides there. That's what people think that school is. First Nations people, they don't know what school is. They don't. The only thing that they know is what they enjoy, which every human being, they enjoy running around, they enjoy activities, they enjoy experiencing those kind of things, because that's what creates bonds and things like that. And those are one of the only situations that create bonds, and they involve that in school. But school actually isn't an educational formatted place for people to actually learn, and First Nations people don't know what school is. And I'm going to be one of the first people to say, I know that's true and I know that's a fact because I am 100% free, 100% First Nations. And all the people that I grew up, the time that it took for me to figure out what school meant, nobody had ever told me, nobody said anything, and nobody was knowledgeable to give that information. Nobody knew it. And now that I know and understand that this is an issue and a problem, that I could do something about it, I could say something about it, I can help somebody, I could teach someone, I can bring a whole new different point of view about what school is, just from my point of view. And everybody else could do their own thing, if they listen to this, if they already have that information, if they know what's wrong, I'm part of that. I'm a part of it. I'm one of those people that are waking up, not for any other reason, but not only for myself, but for my people as well, because no one's going to provide this information. Nobody. But anyways, so we're now back at education. Yeah, so everybody in my life is a witness that I did my best to go to school. Even knowing that I needed to get school done just to get a job, and that was the main goal that I had, was graduate, get a job, graduate, get a job, graduate, get a job, and every single time I went to school, or I tried to go to school, something came up. Wasn't able to. No friendships, nothing, like nothing. All that happened. Now I'm 27 years old, and I never been around my mother on her side of the family since the last time my mother and my father had stopped moving us back and forth. I don't know why they stopped. They just said, well, that's it, and then we ended up getting stuck here in Vancouver, staying with my father. I had to go through all that trials and tribulation up until today, and let's see if I missed anything important that I could definitely put in there, because I did a huge leap. But that leap is literally nothing in that leap. It's just me trying to go to school, me getting evicted, And my evictions were not really even evictions. They were more like I didn't pay my rent, so I had to go somewhere else. And for me, being a regular income assistance, you only get so much, so that doesn't really last. So the moment that they gave me the opportunity to pay for my own rent and putting it in with my support, that's where another issue came in, because I had to take care of my rent. But what I was trying to do, I was trying to be smart about it. I was trying to use it in a way where I could build my credit. So I'd make a small loan, pay that loan, get the money back, and then pay my rent. I was doing that, trying to build my credit, and then one day I wasn't able to pay my bill, the credits, so I could re-loan and then pay my rent, because those trials and tribulations came in. So therefore I fell off, and then I wasn't even really drinking at the time. And then, because I was hanging out with my brother and my cousins and whatnot, I ended up getting into drinking. So then, every now and at a certain time, around that time, I started drinking, and I'd drink, I'd smoke a cigarette, I would do that every now and then I'd get evicted, and it's not like I would drink heavily and smoke heavily. I would just take little bits here and there, and then it became at a point, it's like, I don't have enough to pay my rent, and then I have to talk to my aunt or whatever, and then that's how all of that came. But there's just one thing that I will mention. When I was staying in the Kwayatsu building, I never talked to anybody. Like, after coming from Saskatchewan, from Vancouver to Alberta, to Vancouver to Saskatchewan, back to Vancouver, there was a gap from Saskatchewan back to Vancouver. And that kind of gap that I'll talk about is friendship that I had in Vancouver. Because the first time that I got moved out, I lost the connection from that friends. Those friends were supposed to be my forever lifetime friends. As far as I'm aware, that's what they were supposed to be. Because I never made any friends to replace those friends. So I left those friends not knowing I would lose them forever, and I went to Alberta, stay with my mom. Then we ended up going back to short visit back to Vancouver. I think I may have some contact with them. Then I ended up getting moved back to Saskatchewan. That's where I lost all contact, if I had any contact at all. Then from Saskatchewan, I made friends there, or people made friends with me, and then I had to go back to Vancouver, and then I technically lost contact with those people, and then staying with my father. So yeah, staying with my father. So pretty much lost contact with those people. So now I'm back, no friends at all, technically, and surviving through all of that. And so what it is that and just surviving through that whole thing, being with my family, my extended family, and having to go through all of this, and trying to go to school and try to graduate, and trying to do stuff with my life and making that business and then having to close, well, having the idea and then not using it and then opening the idea into a business, then having to close it, and anything else that I missed. Let's see. Yeah, another thing is I was hanging out with this group of people. At the time, they were kind of my friends, but I got injured because the kid wanted to punch me constantly. And I say a kid because technically he is still a kid, and I think I was like 25. And so, but I'd tell you guys about that. So, punctured my lung, had to go to the hospital. I didn't go right away, so I had blood building up in my lung. Had to get that drained. Had to get my lung healed, so it had to wait for it to heal with the rod inside, like the tube. So then they had to extract air every so often to help it heal completely. So I had to press charges on that. I still don't know if the charges were laid because the officer, they just told me that the the they were gonna deal with it, like they were gonna do like their own charge towards him. They didn't say anything, and I told them that I wanted to press charges. They just didn't give me any information or anything, so I don't have any idea if charges were laid. The officer just said we will take care of this, because he was trying to say, well, how about we just leave it? That's what he's trying to tell me, and I told him, it's like he put me in the hospital. I was like, I almost died, and then it took him a while to really think about it, and then that's when he said, oh, well, we'll take care of this. So I don't even think that they pressed charges on this guy, but but we'll talk about that. Anything else that I failed to mention? Yeah, that's me. That's who I am. That's me. That's me, Patrick Pokemon Small. This is about me, my life, my family members. So this is what you will learn a lot about in this channel. Because everything I said was very brief. Some of it was detailed, but it's not as detailed that it should be. So please stay tuned and be ready to hear all the detail by detail that I can say that I know. Again, everything that I'll be saying and providing in this channel is 100% true to my knowledge and fact that I'm and my awareness. Everything that I'm going to be saying and providing here about me and my life and what happened to me is going to be 100% true. And if it's something that I can't provide that is 100% true, I will definitely let you guys know and let you guys know what I think on the situation. Because I'm telling you guys in this channel, you're going to learn a lot about me. You're going to learn a lot about my mental awareness. So, it's also another thing that will be in this channel. We're now recording for about 40 minutes, going on 50 minutes, so we gotta stop because I gotta think about what my next video is gonna be based on what I want to provide here on YouTube. And I do have other channels. I'm currently working on other things here on the platform, and I want them all to be separated. So let's say if somebody wants to learn about me, I can say, hey, this is who I am. Check this one out. Or if somebody wants to have entertainment or whatever, I'll be like, hey, look, check this out. So I'm trying to separate everything so it's not all on one channel because it would be very, how would you say, scattered. At least here I could have a timelined idea of where my stories will start and where they will end, if they don't end up being random stories all over. But I'm gonna do my best to keep everything organized, and if and when that I'm ready to show you guys the other channels or the channels, this channel, I will definitely be leaving those in the descriptions or wherever I can leave them. Again, I'm new at this, so I'm going to be doing this as a form, just information, but I'm also doing this for a career. Like I'm doing this every single day, trying to do something on the internet, whatever it is. I'm trying to make a living. I'm trying to do my part. But it's not easy. You have to get monetized. You have to get 1,000 subscribers. And on other platforms, you need a certain amount of views. You need followers. You need subs, other things like that. So again, this is me, and I hope you guys really are capable of understanding who I am and what I've been through, and as well as my people as well, because I am one person of many people, and I also speak for a lot of people who aren't here, who aren't on this earth, so I could speak about that in a whole different way, but that might have to be on a different platform or whatever, maybe another channel if I could create it, talking about issues towards First Nations. But that also could be on this channel, because this channel I'm trying to use as a insightful kind of how would you say that, content. But I don't want to say content because it's not what I'm going for. I'm trying to bring people information, whether if it's the way that I see it, or if it's information that needs to be out there. But again, thank you, and I hope you guys enjoy any future videos that come out and take it for its purpose of acknowledging what is happening, what has happened to me in my life as a First Nation. Thank you. Have a good evening, night, or morning. Hey, sorry. Another thing that I forgot to mention, and I feel like I was starting to kind of say something, but another thing that we will get into is when I moved into the Kwayatu building, so there's a couple of things there. Their Vancouver native housing, their mandate is to keep families together. And when me and my brother kind of had our thing, where we were kind of like always like unbalanced. So whenever something unbalanced would happen, it would kind of balance out. And through that process, I ended up getting kicked out of that building because of that unbalancing that started there. Like there was no imbalance like relationship in our life up until we moved in together, technically. I mean, there was a little bit of stuff that happened before that, but it didn't get as bad, or I wouldn't say as bad. I would say it started to get better, but it kind of like had the lasting effect kind of from that. At least from my awareness, that's what it is. But also another thing is, when I was staying in that building, I was physically harmed on my private parts. I'm not comfortable saying exactly because I'm gonna make a video exactly explaining what happened. But what had happened was there's this girl. I say I'm comfortable with saying who and what happened. This is a fact. This is 100% true. Her name is Shay, Shai, or Shay. She is First Nation, and at that time, She was going to the BYRC where I was going as well. It's a little drop-in center. So we were going there a lot, and I didn't talk to anyone at this time. Still having trouble to communicate and cope with people, and um, so she's from there, to BYRC, and she was staying at the building. And I mind you, I'll let you know that at this time, I do believe she had already had a child. So I don't know how many months that it's been since she's had a child, but she had a child. And so now we're gonna move on to this other thing. Is that I met this girl that worked at the native housing, and she was white, and or Nate, but to me she looked white, and she had a very nice like facial features. I guess she came off as a very soft human being. So with that awareness that I had, I figured, I was like, hey, she looks like a very sweet person. Like, all right, well, let me see if I could talk to her, because what had started that was I was getting into an elevator, and she decided to kind of check me out, you can say. Like, she did the whole like look up and then look down, or look down and then look up. She did that whole thing with, even with like in the facial expression, and as I'm in the elevator witnessing this, I'm like, whoa. I was like, oh no. I was like, this girl actually has an interest. I was like, and then from there, you can imagine everything that I went through, trying to talk to her. Like, this was like this first girl in my life that I've ever talked to, and then as I was talking to her, we started to develop a relationship because she worked there, and then, 1 second. Yeah, um so we went through that, and because her mother also worked there, and um so her mother also was also mentoring me, like really putting that foot forward, saying, yeah, I really think you got a chance with her, like, do this or do that. And and so she kind of had my hopes up, getting them up even more. And then um I guess that kind of interfered with what we had, because um it really kind of like fast forwarded my process, because then I was already asking her if she wanted to hang out, whatnot, and then uh, yeah. But we'll talk about more about this in another video. But so that happened. So with that process, we're gonna now go back to so this girl. Her name is Jade. I'm not gonna say her last name, um, and as well as her mother, but um, I mean, I do feel fine talking about it, but we'll talk about it in a video on its own. So her name's Jade. Her mother's name is Tamara. And so I was trying to talk to her, let her know that I'm interested and I wanted to go on a date, even if not, me be friends. And that wasn't working out, because she would, I don't know her mentality, what she was going through, but this is the very first girl that I ever talked to. And then so now we're gonna go back to Shay. So we both stay in the building of the Kwayatsu, and I still don't remember, because of the trauma that happened so like such recently, after, like, with the situation, is that I don't know if I was coming from the elevator or if I was coming from the common area room, which is a TV room and a computer room. So I was either walking from the computer room to use the bathroom, which is like the door next door to the computer room or the common area room, or if I was coming from the elevator to use the common area room. But from my memory, I think I was coming from the common area room, and I went to the bathroom. And as I did that, I ended up seeing Shay. And remind you, she's already had a child and everything. She's already living her life. And I seen her, and I'm a human being that makes eye contact. That's what I do. It's, I have to make sure that everything's like okay, whatnot. So I'm looking. I just open up the door, and or like I go through the door, and I look up, and she's looking at me. Then I'm kind of just kind of like stunned because like she was looking straight into my eyes, and I like kind of looked back. I was just like, oh. And that's when I got into the bathroom, and I got ready to take a poop. So, and there's these bathrooms. They're newer model bathrooms, so they're the the front of the toilet narrows like outwards to a very long outwards, and the toilet designs are kind of smaller, and it kind of like cups you in there to like forcefully kind of like seal it off, kind of, I guess you could say, just from the like, sitting there. So like the weight, the design of it, so it really pushes you into the toilet. So as I'm sitting there, and um, so all my private stuff is being squished like underneath. So like I got into that position pretty quick because I needed to use the bathroom, right? So I needed to sat down. I was like, all right, I'm gonna take a quick poop, and then as I sat down, like, because this lady, Shay, she was walking from the elevator, and it takes a while. I would say about 5 seconds, give or take, maybe a little longer, to get from the elevator to the bathroom. And then as she's making her way, I'm already on the toilet. And then she yanks the on the door like it's open. Like the way she yanked on it was like as if it was like a very like very aggressive. Like the way she yanked it open, she yanked it like just like she yanked it really hard, and it was locked. It was a locked door. And so when she yanked it really hard, like she had like some kind of emotional like rush or whatever, and she yanked it like the way she yanked it, just yanked it really hard, and she thought it was open, and then it slammed on the lock because the lock was locked, and it slammed. And with that slam, that whole emotional like thing that was going on there, my whole body jumped. Like my legs kicked up, so everything was tucked in. So it was technically on the other side of like everything was in the back of me as I jumped up, and in the process, it pulled my private part, and so it damaged one of my private parts, and it pulled it. It straight up pulled it, and I couldn't move. Like I was in so much pain that I was just in shock. I was just in so much pain. I didn't know what to do. And I was like just like trying to keep myself from like getting any more damage, and I had to hold myself, my things together, and I had to open the door, and I had to like waddle all the way up to my room, and I had to get in bed because I was too shocked. I was too scared because it was a part of my private parts. I didn't know what to do, and I was in a very odd position. So I just, I said it's really late right now. It's like I don't know what to do. I'm in shock. I just don't know what to do. So then I just went to bed, and in the morning I kind of forgot about it. And then as I got up, there was hardly any pain. And then when I started moving around, that's when the pain came back. So ever since then, that's how I've been living, with staying from the Orwell or from the Kwayatsu building. That was a long time ago. That's from now well over 7 years, and I've been dealing with the same pain ever since. And when that happened, my private part swelled up like a golf ball. I'd say bigger than a golf ball. And ever since then, it's changed. That's been always different. Like it's never been the same. And I wake up every single morning with pain. You know, I can't run. Ever since that happened, I wasn't able to skateboard or run, and I was very active before that happened. I was running, I was skateboarding, I was biking, I was doing everything. And then after that happened, I couldn't do anything. You know, and that's who I am today. Like I can't run, I can't skateboard, I can't bike. And if I need to do those things, I gotta be careful because I could end up hurting myself and having to take more like pain pills. But it's another thing that I wanted to mention. I forgot to mention to involve in the first video because it's definitely something that needs to be understood. I do want to talk more in depthly about it, and this may be the in-depth part. But thank you.